All right, I'm going to go on and get started because it's noon. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We're going to go over how to kickstart your career. We're going to go over interviewing, and then I'm going to open it up to some panelists that I had come to help you guys. Okay. So thank you. So I just have a good quote here. I think it's inspirational. It's by Disney. All of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. I think it's always a good thing to think about this quote whenever you're wanting something in life. So wanted to include it. Okay, so as you go through the interview process, okay, there is a basic anatomy of the interview. So you'll have your pre-interview, the interview, and the post-interview. That's always what you're going to go through in the interview process. So I'm going to go through that with you. Okay, the first thing you always want to do is research where you're interviewing with. Okay, you want to do that before you go into your interview. You don't want to go into it blind. So you want to know the history, the big picture, and the more specifics of the company. So you want to investigate them just as much as they're researching you. Okay, just like if you are going to take a teacher here or a professor, a lot of you rate your professors, right? You do some background into it. You kind of want to know what kind of you're getting yourself into. So just like you do that, you want to put time and effort into where you're researching for your job. Okay, like when I taught at Springtown, I wanted to know the demographics, the socioeconomic status, the administrator-teacher-student ratio, all of that sort of thing. So make sure that you hit everything you want to know about that company before you're prepared before you go into your interview. All right. If you're going to do a pre-interview from home, like you may have a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, and it's not in person, you always want to make sure you familiar yourself with the platform that you're going to use. Okay. Also, make sure that you have your technology prepared. You do not want to be the person that has a filter on your technology. I watched a video the other day back when we had COVID, and that's how everyone did their stuff. I'm sure some of you have seen it. It was a group of lawyers, and he had a cat filter on. And that's not professional, so make sure you don't have a filter on and that you're not a cat, okay? Also, you want to check your background because you want to have a clean space. You want it to look nice and professional. So make sure that you cleaned your little area. Make sure you've tested all your equipment and that everything's running. Make sure also that you don't have any system updates. That would be really bad. So just make sure that you have everything prepared just in case. Okay. And if you're going to go in there in person, I always say make sure your phone is on silent or it's turned off. Okay. You don't want a distraction while you're in person in an interview and have kind of like an extra person in the room. Okay. You want to give your people that you're interviewing with your whole time and energy and not feel like you care more about what's going on in your phone than you do them. Okay, so just make sure to do that. Always dress for success. So when you're going into an interview, you want to make sure you look professional because that also gives you more confidence when you're going into the interview. You also want to think about hygiene. Okay, make sure you have all your right stuff on. You smell good, but not overly. Like, don't overdo it. Make sure you have clean, pressed, wrinkle-free clothes. Okay. Go in there with confidence. Remember, your resume gets you through the door for the interview, but the appearance and is a vibe check. Okay. They want to make sure that you are the right person for the job. Okay. Appearance counts to that vibe. Okay. First impressions count. So make sure that your first impression is a good one. Okay. Okay. Tell me about yourself questions. So these are the most important things, I think, when you're asked, everyone asks, tell me about yourself. Okay, you want to focus on these things: your education, your work experience, all of your strengths that you have that you can bring to the table in their company, and the future, like sell yourself. So begin with your education. Okay, so what you did, what was your major in school, how you became interested in that field, the skills that you got to bring to the table for that company that would relate and be transferable, work experience that you have, and key strengths. Remember that they're always going to usually ask for a weakness too. So I always say give at least 2 strengths and give 1 weakness, but it needs to be something you can overcome or that you can put into a strength. So for me, I always say I'm a perfectionist, which I am, okay? But that's not always a bad thing, right? I may take longer to do certain tasks, but usually when I get them done, they're meticulous and well detailed, okay? So always sell yourself. Make something that could be a weakness into a strength, okay? And then end with why you're interested in working for that company, and all the skills and experience that you can bring to the future of that company. Okay. So just also talk about hard skills, soft skills. So always talk about your major, what you came into, along with your time management or adaptability, flexibility. A good thing to say is if you're going in to be an engineer, you have a lot of math skills. You did a lot of math usually, but you also could have a lot of flexibility. Okay, or if it's I always say sports related, a lot of people understand sports. Okay, you can always say, well, some things are I have to know the techniques and the routines and the penalties. So you need to know all of those things, but you also need to know how to work as a team, and you need to know sportsmanship. Okay, so you need to focus on all of the things that you're good at yourself, and also things that you can bring into a team relationship with that company. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. The card technique is something I always think is a good thing. You can share your stories or past experiences through this technique and use it when you're interviewing. You don't have to, but I think it's a good thing to do. It's context, action, result, and relate. So you tell them about a specific event or situation that happened, and give them kind of detail into what happened, explain to them, and then an action that you took to address whatever situation you're talking about, what you did to accomplish in that situation. If it didn't succeed, what you could get from it, what did you learn, and then relate it to the position you're applying for. So you're showing some of your past experiences and they're getting to know you personally. And I think that's very important in an interview, especially if they're going to remember you. You always want them to remember you. So you want to sell yourself, but be careful not to spend too much time on the story. Okay? You always want to ask the right questions. It's a two-way communication process when you're interviewing. You want it to be comfortable. You want to get to know them just as much as they're getting to know you, because you also want to know if it's the right fit, right? Not every interview you go on is going to be maybe somewhere you want to work. You may go into the interview and find that you don't like the vibe, right? And then it's just not for you, and that's fine. It is a two-way communication between you and the people that are interviewing you. So questions you should ask: describe an average day on the job, what is the next step in the hiring process? If you freeze, a good thing to do is always ask, what would you like to know about the job? That way you have something to ask. It's always good to have a question to ask. You can always get personal with the interviewer too and ask about their experience working there. Okay, so you get more of a like one-on-one with that interviewer. And I think getting more personal with them, like kind of knowing them a little more, will help them remember you even more. Okay. I just put fun little memes in there to make it less, like a little more fun. I have flaws. What are they? I sing in the shower. Sometimes I spend too much time volunteering. Occasionally I'll hit somebody with my car. I like The Office. So, this also relates back to like when I was talking about strengths and weaknesses. Like you could say, well, that's my weakness is perfectionism. It's a drawback, but it also has a benefit. Like, oh, get someone with my car. Too much time volunteering. Also, I put during a job interview yesterday, I poured some water into a cup and it overflowed slightly. Nervous? Asked the interviewer. I replied simply, no, I give 110%. Well, that was a good one. Okay, to sum it up, in an interview, you want to expand, share, know, and prepare. So expand on the key items listed on your resume and your cover letter. Be sure to reference any past experiences that fit that position that you're going in for. You want to share your car stories that showcase any past experiences. You want to know your strengths and weaknesses and show how you've overcome at least one weakness. Okay, and you want to prepare a closing statement and questions. After the interview, this is me personally. I like to send a thank you note or email to the interviewers to thank them for their time. I researched and only 20% of candidates tend to do this. I think it's a good thing to do. It lets them know that you went the extra mile and lets you stick out a little more to them and show that you care about their time and that position. So I just think it's a good thing to do, and it'll advance you as a candidate of choice. And I see on my workshops, I always send thank you notes. So just think it's a good personal touch to do. All right. Enough of me. Let's get to the real reason we want to be here. All right. I'm going to introduce your panel today. Thank you for joining. And I will let them come down here, if that's okay. And I will put them on the hot seat and get a little relief for me. So I'm going to lead into some interview panel questions and let them answer, and you can get their perspective across the table on some of these answers to your questions. All right? Okay. All right. So the first question is, what steps should a student take now to advance towards their desired career or objective? Anyone want to go first? Oh, I should introduce you. I'm sorry. I'm so relieved to be done. I'm so sorry. So this is Dr. Todd Allen Farmer. He is our president of Weatherford College. Thank you so much for being here. This is Dr. Diann Ainsworth. She is an English professor here. And doesn't she look great today? And then there's Mr. Doug Jefferson, who will probably tell more stories than accurate information. He is our Associate Dean of Student Development, and he is amazing. So he'll actually give you really good answers. I'm just joking. All right, now let me turn it over to them for questions. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, what steps should a student take now to advance towards their desired career or objective? Anyone to go first?
I would say take into the see of what education level is required. Also check in to see if the type of job that you would like to apply for, if that fits your moral standing as to what you believe in, and it's something that can benefit you as well as your family, because if you can stand up for the long haul, that's so important to find something that works well with you, your moral, and also your family standard.
Any future teachers? No? Okay. Well, my only comment on that was when you interview for teaching positions, that you do a teaching demo. It's usually 5 to 10 minutes, and that's a lot of prep work for a future teacher. So that was a suggestion on that. You've got to have that lesson planned. I want to piggyback on what Doug said, Mr. Jefferson said. I'll be more professional on the career coach handout. If everybody got that, our career coach that we have here, it's on the WC website. It shows you pick a career, and then it tells you your academic pathway. And so, how do you get that career? By meeting the requirements of the educational goals and degrees that you need. And so I think it's a great program that we have available to you to show you how to get there. So follow that pathway to that career.
I guess I would add to that to put on your thick skin. And what I mean by that is at this point in your professional journey, you may not have as much experience as you will have later on, and you may not have interviewed as much as you will later on down the road. Just know at this stage in your journey that you're not going to be selected for every job you interview for. I can tell you that I have struck out a whole lot more interviewing than I have actually been awarded the jobs. So keep your chin up, keep your thick skin on, learn from the interviewing process, refine your presentation skills, keep adding to your education and your experience, keep building your references. References are really important, professional references. And, I made the mistake early in my career of not fostering and building some of those professional references. And I thought, well, I don't really agree with how this person does it. And so I'm not going to use them as a reference. That was a mistake. Those people can help you. And often, if someone serves as a mentor, they begin to sponsor you and they want to see you succeed and they want to open doors for you. And so they can let you know about this job or that job, and they can provide you with that critically important reference should they get the call to check on you and whether or not you would be a good fit.
All right. What essential items should a candidate come prepared with for an interview?
I would say definitely confidence, not arrogance. And dealing with professionalism is so important that each person know what they're getting. It's kind of like what President Trump just said, know what they're getting, so you have to have thick skin. And some people have attitudes, some people have distinct personalities. Don't go in there with a distinct personality. Turn it into something, an opportunity for you. If you may have a chip on your shoulder, may have had a bad day, this and that. We have to learn how, if we have a bad morning, how to get rid of that to make it so that we can turn that into positive energy to make us successful. It's about the inner self, the attitude, and if we can control our inner self attitude to make it reflect how we feel, the interviewers can feel that and they know what's in your heart, and that makes it more interesting for them.
I haven't interviewed in 20 years, but I've sat on several hiring committees. And one thing I noticed, of course, is, bring paper, pen. It's fine to jot down a few notes. One thing I did notice on one hiring committee is that the person completely wrote down the question we asked before they got started answering. You might jot down a few words, but start answering. So it is nice to have those notes there for you, or just making some like reminding yourself, okay, I want to ask a question about this later, but take shorthand. Don't wait, don't pause too long because it gets a little uncomfortable. But come in with energy and a smile on your face.
I really agree with everything that was said by both of them. Being positive, being energetic, being the kind of person that the interview panel wants to work with for many years to come, that's really, really important. You have to make a connection with those individuals. They have to like you as a human being. I would add to consider your audience. Considering your audience is very important. I know of a president who didn't get the job because of a search committee, that there were engineers on this particular search committee, and the engineers were very left-brain analytical, and they were the ones that wanted all that writing down. And then people like me are more concerned with some of the softer skills, and we can close the gaps on the technical skills. But considering your audience, and earlier it was, I think Stephanie said that she was, and these weren't your words, but paraphrasing, she was interviewing them as they were interviewing her. And I can tell you, I do that every time that I interview. When I'm interviewing, just like they're watching me, I'm watching every person on that committee, and I'm looking at their nonverbal communication. Their nonverbal, their body language is so important. They're telling you a wealth of information without ever opening their mouth. And then when they do open their mouth, the questions that they ask you can be very telling as well. And so I know which members on the committee like me and want to hire me. I know which ones don't like me, and I know which ones maybe they're unsure. And so I really focus on those that I haven't sold myself to yet, and make sure that I address whatever concerns that they might have. Going back to Mr. Jefferson's comment about that thin line between confidence and arrogance, you don't want to be perceived as a narcissistic egomaniac, but you also don't want to be perceived as a wishy-washy mouse that can't make meaningful contributions. Having the professional discernment and the experience to know that balance, to strike that balance, is critical. And I will tell you, I have failed at both ends of that continuum. I've gone into interview settings where I was too confident and came across as cocky, and that was not well received by the committee. And I've come across as being too soft and too insecure and not being assertive enough for what the committee was looking for. So having failed many, many, many times, I learned to refine my skill set and learn to read people more effectively during that interview setting. And I could monitor and adjust based on the feedback, the nonverbal communication that I was getting from that interviewing committee. But the number one thing that I would say is have confidence. Going into that interview setting, have confidence, believe in yourself, believe in who you are. And if you sincerely believe that, I think the committee's going to pick up on it.
How can candidates effectively utilize networking to not only secure interviews, but also to perform optimally during those interviews?
I think a lot of it's time to tell you what President Foreman just spoke. Networking, it covers, reaching out to people, trying to find out information, but also when I'm as an interviewee watching those interviews, I'm networking to see who is interested, to see who may not be interested, to see if they're watching, how I blink my eyes, if I do nothing. So that's a form of networking also while you're in the middle of the interview. So it's so important that we remember networking deals with communication, it deals with computer system, it deals with, like we were just talking about, the discernment of watching everyone, how they're watching you. That is networking. It is so important as an applicant that you see how they're going to respond to you. Give an example, in an interview, if I'm interviewing someone, if someone interviews me, but especially if I'm interviewing someone, if I ask a question, but when they respond, if they look at everyone but me, something is going on there. And pay attention to those things as well. It could be It may be something and it may not be, but that's a form of networking. If someone doesn't look at you when you ask a question or vice versa, it's try to find out the reason for that. You may not ever find out that that's a form of networking. So watch their mannerisms, how they respond to you and how you respond to them.
Mentors were mentioned a minute ago, and I hopefully you all got the brochure on the faculty student mentoring program here at the college. If not, there's some more brochures down here. But we have 5 pathways, guided pathways at Weatherford College, and we have faculty mentors in each pathway. They become your references, your connections to other people in the industry. Depending on the pathway that you want to go into, talk to these mentors, these faculty mentors. They can answer all your questions and help you network.
I would just add that networking is very important. And, you know, when I was young at Weatherford College, I came from a background of poverty. I had no network. I had no connections. I had no friends, parents, or aunts or uncles or people that could help me get a job or even get an interview. And so I had to scratch and claw my way every rung on the ladder moving up. And I can tell you that it was a heck of a lot easier later in my journey when I knew people, when I knew professionals. I had people who knew me and knew the quality of my work. And so if you early in your job search will begin to look for those mentors and build those professional relationships that turn into sponsorship later on down the road. And you can learn, even if you can humble yourself and acquire mentors or people that maybe you don't even necessarily want to emulate those individuals. You can learn what not to do from them, but you can also pick up a few things that they do very well. And so I would say cast a very wide net, and you can't have too many friends. I don't care what profession you go into, you've got to know how to deal with people, with human beings. And yes, artificial intelligence is on the rise and machine learning, and I understand all of that. But for 99% of us, we're going to be interacting with human beings at some point, and those soft skills are very, very important.
And add to that, also, networking with somebody's correct, but not only networking in that line of work, but in the community. Networking with the different churches, network in the community of where you want to work with the different ISB, the different offices. That's so important too, because once you enter that community, you'll be dealing with everyone in the community.
How can you best represent yourself during an interview, and how should one dress for an interview to convey professionalism and alignment with the company's culture?
I know the question was, but I'm doing this. So we have this a lot of times in interviews. Could you reread that?
Yes. How can you best represent yourself during an interview, and how should one dress for an interview to convey professionalism and alignment with the company's culture?
As we said earlier, confidence, going in with the confidence is, but you have to study. In order to have that confidence, you have to do research and know what kind of pinpointed what questions may be asked and how to respond to them if they have a piggyback off the question. But then it's also, as far as dress, it would also depend on what you are interviewing for. If it's a fun type place, you dress accordingly to that. Don't get crazy, but we'll make sure it's something that'll be fun that they can relate to as far as the dress. But make sure that what you're wearing compliments you. It's something that you feel comfortable in. So,
he answered that so well. The only other thing I would add is I always think about this idea of Goldilocks. When you're answering questions in an interview, don't go too long or too short. Just right. And you've got to figure out what that answer is. But I think when you talk too long. But I have been in an interview that one person took 30 minutes and another person took 10. And that tells me they didn't answer enough. So just right.
Regarding the attire, the appropriate attire, I recommended the lady to my right because I've known her for 5.5 years now, and I've never once seen her when she was not dressed in a professional manner that was appropriate for the setting. So I would say consider your audience. Again, going back to your audience, what kind of an institution are you interviewing with and applying for? The technology sector, for example. IBM used to have a very strict dress code where you had to wear blue pinstripe suits if you were a man. Now the technology industry is greatly varied. You don't have to be clean cut with a certain kind of tie knot in a blue pinstripe suit. There's much more variation, but there are still cultural norms associated with individual organizations that vary from organization to organization. Early in my career, I was interviewing for K-12 superintendent positions. And today I'm wearing cowboy boots with a suit. I can tell you that there are some ISDs in Texas that when you're interviewing for the superintendent job, if you're not wearing cowboy boots, you're not getting the job. And there are other ISDs in the state of Texas that if you are wearing cowboy boots, you're not getting the job. Very different cultures in different parts of the state. And so knowing what the local culture is, considering the organizational culture, considering your audience, and relating this back to the previous question of networking, if you have someone that works for that organization or someone that knows someone in that organization that you can bounce questions off of and ideas off of about what kind of attire is acceptable and what kind isn't, there are a lot of things that at this stage in your journey you probably don't know about. For example, next week I present to a Chamber of Commerce function that's very politically to the right. I will be wearing a red tie to that function, and I'll be wearing a double Windsor tie knot. That's by design, given that audience. If I was going to a different audience, I would be wearing probably a blue tie and a different kind if I wore a tie at all. But I would know who my audience is, and I would attempt to dress appropriate for that audience. One last example about attire. There used to be a multi-millionaire, I think billionaire named Ross Perot, who had electronic data systems that ran for president. And this was back in the days before airport security. And he had the famous saying of, if a man is too lazy to tie his shoes, a man is too lazy to work for my company, electronic data systems. That they wanted the old-fashioned lace-up tied shoes. And now with airport security, many people wear slip-on shoes. So what I'm telling you is, this is the age of Instagram. And the last thing that I will add, ladies, is I see some Instagram stuff. Consider modesty when you're going into an interview setting. What you do on your own time is your own business. But your digital dirt will follow you. Way back early in my career, I had a very, very prim and proper, wonderful young lady that was in National Honor Society. I was the high school principal. She was on student council. She went off to college, and on her 21st birthday, you may not remember MySpace, it was before Facebook, she posted a picture of herself pouring champagne all over herself in her undergarments, and that went viral. And then she tried to come back and get a job in the district, and I would have loved to have hired her. But the problem was my bosses, most of them were deacons at the local Baptist church that did not even remotely approve of a young lady pouring champagne all over herself in her undergarments, and she didn't get a job because of it in that district. And so consider modesty, consider what you post online, consider your audience, and dress appropriately.
What are the key elements one should research about a company before going into an interview?
One thing would be turnover rate. They will do a lot of employees. For some people, that may not matter because some people change jobs like they change shoes. But if you're looking for a place to stay, retire, and build the benefits, check the turnover rate. We can also check with to see if they will allow you to each individual to grow and add, their own opinion. Have their own opinion, but it needs to be within the realms of policies of what the institution or the company has. So just find out how much they value the employees, how much they will let the employees grow, and how much they might be able to do.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing too. Job satisfaction, you on your slide, you had Glassdoor, and you can look at the percentages of how much employees enjoy their job at these different companies. So that's always important to check. I think that you've mentioned this too, growth opportunities. I was thinking opportunities for success within a company. You want to be sure of your pathway to promotion within a company. How long might it take to get to the level that you want to get to, and what does it take to get there? So a question you could ask in an interview is, if I keep my mind open and learn all these parts of the jobs, how long might it take me to be promoted? So it's just something to consider.
I agree fully. Upward mobility. Do they support upward mobility? Regarding life-work balance, what's the right fit for you? Everybody's focused on money, but the flip side of money is, are you going to have a life if you're working 85, 90 hours a week? And how does the organization treat its employees? Are you disposable? And some organizations treat their employees as disposable. Or are you a valued part of a team? And is this the kind of place that's going to nurture you and grow you and help you blossom into the very best version of yourself?
Dr. Farmer, you already touched on this one, but how important is one's digital footprint, like LinkedIn and other professional networks, in the interview process?
President Farmer had mentioned that it's so important because that's one of the things that a lot of companies are doing. They are checking to see what's out there in social media. So it's so important to have professionalism in everything that you do, even when you post it. Have professionalism when you're out and about, because we have this thing, video cameras, to where that if you go out and do something that you think no one is watching you, you can show up on something. So it's very important that to have integrity no matter what. It's so important because people can be taking photos of you without you even noticing it. So carry yourself in a manner that you are in an interview. Give an example. When you're out eating, you have an interview because people are watching. And you never know, some of those people that are there watching, they see you, they may remember you. Then you go in for an interview with them. They can remember if you were loud, what you were doing while you were out eating, while you were shopping at Walmart, anything like that. So carry yourself in a manner, because social media and digital things are out there. So I'm not telling us not to have fun. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to make sure that we talk to you appropriate at times.
And definitely keep your LinkedIn updated. My son was hired in a retail management company. And in 4 years, he runs his own store, and he is hiring people every day. He works very hard to keep his store fully employed and fully covered with employees. And he's always looking for good people, and he's working on LinkedIn.
I would add to that. Earlier, I referenced the modesty factor. I'll share very briefly that I know another president that actually was named as a lone finalist for a job, and one of the trustees didn't like the candidate and started digging into not only her digital dirt, but the digital dirt of her children. And one of her daughters had a very political stance, a very, very strong political stance. And so I would remind you, depending again on what kind of job you're going for, if you go too far politically one way or the other, where you're perceived as a radical fringe kind of person, and that's out there for the whole world to see, that can hurt you as well. So be mindful of that. And going back to what Mr. Jefferson said, just about, who are you when nobody's looking? Because you need to really assume that in this day and age with the technology that everybody's always looking. It is very hard to hide that even your Alexa in your room is listening to you at times. And so be mindful of who you are when no one's looking, and try to live and be that person that you really want to be. And then you can be authentic. And when you're in that interview setting, you can say it with confidence, and you can look them in the eye and they know you're who you say you are. That's very powerful.
What are common mistakes interviewees make that can turn off interviewers?
Being late, talking too long, talking too short. And this is one thing that always catches me off guard, but like I said, something in my head is when they end a sentence with the word "and." Where are you? I don't know, for some reason that's something, there's some other, there could be some other terminologies repeated, like, different things like stuttering, not stuttering, some people, but just as far as certain lingo when they're being interviewed, definitely being late, just talking too much, not being attentive, not being confident in using the word at the end of every sentence.
I would say speaking negatively about previous positions and people. Don't do it.
Agreed. That's a big hit. And avoiding negativity in general and just being as positive as you can. Also, proofing, having someone that you trust proof your application materials and your resume. Misspelled words on your resume, it just says that you're not a professional. When you go into that interview setting, it's very important for you to project a professional, competent representation of yourself. And while you can err by being too professional and too stuffy, my humble opinion is that it's better to go in a little more professional than necessary and then relax. For example, when I walk in, I go around, I've got my jacket on, I'm formal, I shake hands, I make direct eye contact. And then as the interview progresses, if there are less formal people, which usually there will be, I'll take my jacket off and I'll change my posture, and I'll change my diction, my rate of speech, my tone. I change a lot to show that I can just be one of the group. I can fit in, and I'm like you. I'm one of you, and together we're going to do great things. So confidence, but not arrogance, I think is what you said earlier.
I know we're getting close to time, so I was going to ask this last question. What is the single most impactful piece of advice you can give to someone hoping to ace their next interview?
Confidence. And there's a saying that practice makes perfect. I'm going to change that just a little bit. Perfect practice makes perfect. Anyone can, like playing basketball, doing whatever, you can go out there and practice sloppily. But if you do not practice perfect plays, then the performance will not be as perfect as it can be. The same thing with enunciation, the same thing with performance. It's talking about perfect practice would mean having your resume reviewed. That's perfect practice. Doing things perfectly, it make the interview even more perfect.
I would say be sure to say you're willing to learn. especially when you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of experience on your resume. I'm willing to learn. Just, offer, I'll dig in whatever I don't know. I'm dedicated, all of those things, and you want to help the company thrive. So just say you're willing to learn.
I guess I would close with believe in yourself is the most important thing, I think. And, you may give the best interview of your life. You may be the best candidate for that job, and you still may not get the job because the committee or some boss may want to hire a relative or a friend of a relative, or they may have a certain kind of person that they're looking for to blend with their existing team, and you don't fit that bill. There are a myriad of reasons why you may not be selected for a job, even if you're the best candidate, and even if you did the best you could do. So going back to believing in yourself, learning from the experience, refining that skill set so that you can have that perfect practice. It's like any other skill in life. The more you do it, the more thought you put into it, the more you have that perfect practice, the better you're going to become. And you will find success if you believe in yourself.
One thing that is always what's on your resume, let it be true. And just because I type my name on a computer doesn't mean that I have computer skills. Make sure that whatever you put on that is true because it can be done.
And I've got one last thing to add too. Be like Stephanie. She's doing this on her own time with her own effort. She's going above and beyond because she cares about you and she wants to help you. And she put this together today and did a great job, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and helping us, Mr. Jefferson, Dr. Farmer, Dr. Ainsworth. We really appreciate it. I know that everybody here got a lot, and I know there's people out in Zoom land, so I really appreciate your time and helping us with this.
Yeah, I was like, Stephanie, I'm so sorry. Can I ask one question? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I appreciate all of you being here. And specifically, I love the fact you mentioned the putting the at the end of the sentence because 24 years ago when I was in high school, I used to get 15 minutes of detention time, lunch detention time every day. If you finish the sentence with at in high school, they would be like, detention. And so many people still don't know that. Like I have so many students who do that. But long story short, big question is, and I really, really appreciate you, Stephanie, because I've been here 13 years. I'm rusty on all of this as well. It's such a great platform to, refresh everything that we need to know. But as a professor here for this many years, the biggest compliment we get is when students will come to us and they say, I really would love to go this direction. I would really love to be a professor. I would really love to do what you do. Can you give me advice? Can you give me direction? Can you give me, any type of something to set me apart? So I hear this, if I'm lucky, I hear this 1 or 2 times a semester, but is there anything that, and again, it was so much, it was great information when I'm absorbing and keep it, but is there anything according to, whether it's on a hiring committee or the president of the college or department chair, is there anything a student can do that would, in your mind's eye, in an interview, if you have 10 great applicants, something that would set someone apart, something that would call your attention to make them, you go, well, I remember them. Is there any type of atmosphere that, or anything they can do that might make you remember them or give them a little bit of an edge because I get that a lot and I don't know how to answer the question.
I'll share. For me, it's who they are as a human being.
Okay.
I can teach technical skills. If they have gaps in whatever aptitude they need to perform well at the job, we can close those gaps. But I can't fundamentally change who they are as a human being. And so trying to drill down into what makes them tick, who they are as a human being, and going back to, is this the kind of person that I want on my team? Is this the kind of person that cares about improving the human condition and making this world a better place? Or whatever the objective of the organization that you're going to apply to. Think who you are is very important in how you communicate who you are.
When you talking about as far as setting a difference from when we look at the application and resume or at the actual
Interview process.
interview.
Is there something that kind of draws you to one applicant more than another?
I would, you know, the president Sanders said, it's their personality. Or they would, and a lot of times it's in that, once you sit on the interview committee, a lot of times, it's not that you're judging anyone, but it comes a time when you can kind of like discern, is their posture, is their attitude, is their personality in sync with what they put down on the paper.
Okay.
You try to tie those two things together, and then you can make a decision from there. But being yourself, and it's so important because you know, I say this a lot of times to the student. I guess you can if you're the actor, but you cannot be what you are.
Getting up to the other side.
Be real. You know, if you be real, then the real you will come out and be, you know.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much, and thank you, Mr. Jefferson, and Dr. Ainsworth, and Dr. Farmer. I appreciate your time.